Hello, and welcome to Dolphin's Dive, the weekly strategically minded Handelabra stream hosted by Dolphin. Handelabra believes in civil rights for everyone and in being as inclusive as possible, so any comments or activity actively working against those goals are not welcome and will not be tolerated. You can follow us at Handelabra Games on Twitch and Handelabra on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can follow me personally at LewDolphin21 on Twitter, and on Twitch and YouTube it's LewDolphin, no digits. Sentinels of the Multiverse, Bottom of the Ninth, One Deck Dungeon, and Aeon's End are available on Steam, iOS, and Android devices, and Spirit Island is available in early access on Steam, and you can get more information on the games at Handelabra.com. Hello DF, hello Seamus. Welcome to the Aeon's End and One Deck Dungeon stream. So let's figure out what we're gonna do here by going to the statistics and deciding based off of that, as I am wont to do. Let's see, 3 games against Carapace Queen, 3 games versus Rageborn. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with Carapace Queen this time, I believe, because it's, well, that's 3-0. And what about the mages? Some 3ers, some 4ers. Kind of evenly spread, that said, although this is the little higher than the rest. But let's see, so we're gonna do Carapace Queen. What do we want to bring here? Let's just take a look through these mages to remind yourselves and me how these all work. A nemesis attack or power card is drawn, but before it is resolved you may discard it. It has no effect. That's very powerful. Although most of these are very powerful. Any player gains 4 life. That's a lot of life. Cast any player's prepped spell without discarding it, then cast that prepped spell again, discard it afterward. Activate during any player's main phase. That player may return up to 3 spells in their discard pile to their hand. That player may prep up to 2 spells to each of their opened breaches this turn. We played with Lash last week, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago. Any ally draws 4 cards. Card draw, very powerful actually in this game. Phaedraxa, prevent any damage that the players or Gravehold would suffer during that turn immediately after a turn order card is drawn. Cast a prepped Vortex spell 3 times and then destroy it. And then we played with Zazos. So what are we feeling like here? Let's bring Phaedraxa. Prevent damage dealt to players or Gravehold, that seems nice. Gain an ether, any ally may suffer 1 damage and destroy a card in hand. That's the unique card here. So that gives us innate card destruction, which is nice. Get rid of the unwanted cards. Who else am I feeling? I feel like I haven't really played with Adelheim that much. So let's bring Adelheim. So we can discard an attack or power card if we get this charged up, and we can also prevent damage to players or Gravehold, so lots of mitigation we can employ. And your unique card, gain an ether, any ally may draw a card and then discard a card in hand, so that allows you to filter through your cards a little bit more. Let's hit the random button, see what that gets us. We get Lava Tendril, Essence Theft, so there's some life there. Deal damage for prep spells and adjacent breaches. Deal additional damage for each of your open breaches. So that's a good, interesting mechanic there. And Flexing Dagger, that allows for cheaper focuses and breaches. A means of charging and charging allies. A means of charging allies. Okay, there's lots of cool stuff happening here. The first time on your stream, welcome here, WSU Wusui. I'm sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce it. I was gonna say Hui, but I'm not sure. You normally play Sentinels. This is my stream. You can stream to learn how to play Aeon's End. I would like to believe it is. I do discuss a lot of my thought process. I'll try to perhaps explain general game mechanics. I almost got it right. WSU Hui, like Joey. It's Hui. All right, Hui. I will try to explain a little more, I guess, than usual if you're trying to learn off of this game. But I will go ahead and play with this team, and we'll play on normal. We'll eventually kick this up eventually. The Unleash, place 3 husks into play instead of 2 for the increased rule here. Lewd is pretty good at accidentally teaching. I mean, I am an instructor by trade, so I guess it makes sense that I'm naturally instructive. So go ahead and read things out a little more than we would probably. So we're fighting the Carapace Queen in this match. The Carapace Queen is kind of like is one of the villains or nemesis of this game. Every nemesis has an unleash mechanic. Every nemesis has additional rules. And on the flip side is the setup for that nemesis. So it's similar to Sentinels in that regard. Oh boy. Gotta kick this person out. We're getting botted already. Blocking is not what I want to do though. There we go. I had to type in the command. Okay, so the setup for Carapace Queen, 2 husks are placed into play on the first 2 spaces of the husk track. The husk track is a unique thing for the Carapace Queen. Can't really see it from this screen. We'll see it once the game has started. But every nemesis has an unleash mechanic. The unleash for Carapace Queen is place 2 husks into play. So anytime a card says unleash, which is generally from the nemesis deck, when a card says the nemesis unleashes, then you perform this action. So the action for Carapace Queen is place 2 husks into play. Now the additional rules elaborate a little more on how husks work. Each husk is a minion that has 1 life. When husk is placed into play, it goes in the next available space on the husk track. When a player deals damage to a husk, that player may suffer 1 damage to distribute the damage dealt over multiple husks. So there's damage dealing like in Sentinels, things have HP like in Sentinels, and when you deal damage to a husk that has only 1 life, there's almost always going to be a bleed over. You could suffer 1 damage to have that bleed over actually affect other husks. When Carapace Queen has 15 husks into play and must place another into play, Gravehold suffers 1 damage instead. And you'll see that the husk track only has spots for 15 husks. So when you would put a husk into play and you don't have the space for it, instead Gravehold suffers damage. Gravehold is essentially an additional player of sorts, but not really. It's the neighborhood that you live in, it's the world that we live in, or at least this environment. And it starts, I believe, with 30 HP. If that HP goes down to 0, you lose. So some mechanics deal damage to Gravehold directly, some effects damage Gravehold indirectly. This is one that affects Gravehold directly. Gravehold suffers a damage if there are too many husks. Carapace Queen also has a swarm mechanic, which is not a word that any other nemesis has. When Carapace Queen swarms, the swarm effect is based on the number of husks in play, and the swarm effect based on the number of husks is resolved. So we'll see that when we show the husk track. Yeah, let's just start the game and I can show a little bit more of how these things work. And we start here. So unlike, I mean, it's a turn-based game like Sentinels, but unlike Sentinels, there's a bit of randomness in the order of the turns. On the very top is the turn order deck. And the turn order deck consists of 6 cards. In this game is represented, or in the digital version is represented by ovals. But the first card drawn was a Phaedraxa card, well, technically hero or mage 1 card in the physical game. But in a 2 mage match, you'll have 2 cards for each of the mages, so 2 cards for Phaedraxa, 2 cards for Adelheim, and 2 cards for the Carapace Queen. The Carapace Queen, or at least the Nemesis, will always have 2 cards in the Nemesis deck. If you're playing with 1 mage, you instead have 3 cards for the mage and 2 cards for the Carapace Queen. In a 3-player match, you have 1 card for each of the 3 mages, and then a 4th card is a wild card that lets you select which mage you want to have go. And in a 4-mage game, you have 1 for each mage and then 2 for the Carapace Queen. So in a single-player match, the turn order is 5 cards. In a 2, 3, or 4-player match, it's 6. So lots of things to have to go through, but I'll just point out the husk track since we just discussed it on the Carapace Queen. This is the husk track, and there are 15 squares over here, and you can even see the husks that are placed here. Now in the digital game, they kind of consolidate it to hide that information a little bit. I like seeing it just because it allows me to plan a little better as to what's coming up. So currently we're on the topmost track, which says that when Carapace Queen swarms, she will place 4 husks into play. So her Unleash is to place 2 husks into play. If she swarms at this point, she places 4 husks into play. If we get to the next tier, because we get too many husks, and then she swarms, any player discards a prepped spell, place 2 husks into play. So fewer husks, but there's a different effect that happens. On the 3rd tier, Gravehold suffers 5 damage. Gravehold's health is this number over here, 30. So that's damage dealt to Gravehold directly. On the 4th tier, the player with the lowest life suffers 3 damage, discard a husk. On the 5th tier, the players lose. And this happens if Carapace Queen swarms. It's not we automatically lose once we reach this point, but if we have, say, 14 husks and Carapace Queen swarms, we lose. So we really want to avoid being at that 3rd level. Now, some other quick things I'm going to point out, and we probably should just start playing a game instead of blathering about mechanics. So it's a card game, so every player has a hand of, or starts with a deck of 10 cards, but we build this deck over the course of the game. This is the supplies over here. Each supply pile has a number of cards in it, and each of these cards grants a different kind of effect. There are a couple kinds of basic cards, like there's gems that generally provide ether, relics that are sort of like one-shots in Sentinels of the Multiverse. You play them for an immediate effect, not necessarily getting ether, but for other things. And then we have these things called spells. And spells are what go into your breaches. And your breaches here are the things that look like the sun with a little bit of some crescent and half moon shaped things here. The breaches are places you can insert spells into. And when you prep a spell, which is when you put a spell like, say, if I take this spark spell and I put it there, it's ready for the next turn. It's not immediately ready. I have to wait for my next turn to be able to use the spell if I want to. I don't have to use it right away. But when I use the spell, when I cast the spell, then it provides an effect. The spark spell is the most basic spell. It deals 1 damage. And I can do that damage to the Carapace Queen. I can do it to a husk. I could do it to any of the minions that enter play. So gems are things you generally play you generally play to gain ether. There's usually a button here to play all the gems, just because generally you will end up playing all your gems in hand. There's an optional effect here. I'm not going to employ it just yet. But now I have 4 ether, and this 4 ether I can use to purchase a variety of things. There's things in the supply that I can buy. There are actually 4 cards here I can buy: a Sifter's Pearl, a Searing Ruby, a Flexing Dagger, and a Lava Tendril. And each of these things do... Siri thought I said, "Hey Siri, Ruby, Affecting Dagger, and Alarm for Tendril." I did not say "Hey Siri," and I thought I turned this off even. Let me check really quickly to see if I actually did turn it off. Do not listen for "Hey Siri." Okay, there we go. It's turned off. I must have turned it off on my iPad, but not on my iPhone. I don't generally use "Hey Siri." Okay, so you can spend ether to purchase these cards. They go into your deck, and if you've ever played, it seems like a cross between Ascension and Sentinels. I've not played Ascension, but I have played games like Dominion or what's the other one? Slay the Spire. So you're building your deck, which means that your composition of the cards in your deck will vary over the course of the game. You want to avoid issues like having your deck too clogged between like too many gems or too many spells or too many useless cards, all that sort of crap. But anyway, you can purchase cards. You can actually spend it on focusing or opening breaches, which allows you to be able to prep more spells. Focusing a breach, which I can show you quickly here and rewind, it opens the breach a little bit more. It went from quarter open to halfway open. And if I open this another, or if I focus this another time, if I could afford it, it would go from half open to 3/4 open. And if I focus it at that time, it would then open the breach entirely. If you focus a breach on that turn, you can prep a spell into that breach. If you do that, then you have to use the spell in the next turn that you can. You can't leave it in the breach. Opening a breach is more expensive, but it makes it a permanent permanently open, and thus, you know, you can use it. And you might have noticed that the cost for this opening was 7, but when I focus it, the cost goes down to 5. So the more opened the breach is, or the more the progress you've made towards opening the breach via focusing, the cheaper the open cost is. Each of these mages also has a unique ability that you can spend ether to charge on. So if I put a charge costs 2 ether, and you can see the number of tiles you have to fill up. This is different for each mage. Both of these mages need to charge 5 times in order to get this. For Phaedraxa, her unique ability is Auspex Rune, and you can activate this ability immediately after a turn order card is drawn. When this is fully charged, I can use this ability. This ability prevents any damage that the players or Gravehold would suffer during that turn. So damage prevention, which is awesome in Sentinels, available here in Aeon's End. Adelheim has a different ability, Ethereal Ward. You activate during the Nemesis draw phase. When a Nemesis attack or power card is drawn, but before it is resolved, you may discard it. It has no effect. So if I have this fully charged up and the Nemesis draws a card that I don't want them to have played, we'll just discard it. And when you do that, you lose all the charges, so you have to build this back up. These abilities are generally pretty powerful, but they're also expensive to get to. And if you only focus on these, then you're not building your mages up to be stronger. If you only purchase spells, you're not getting enough spending power. If you only focus on spending power, then you're not, you know, making good progress on the Nemesis. So figuring out where to spend the ether is kind of important. So Searing Rupee, gain 2 ether, gain an additional ether that can only be used to gain a spell. And when you gain a card, it goes in your discard. And the very last thing I want to point out is that unlike most other games, if you exhaust your deck, most games you'll take your discard pile, shuffle it, and that becomes your deck. In Aeon's End, there's no shuffling. When you exhaust your deck, you take your discard, turn it upside down, it's your deck now. And therefore, you can actually game your deck a little bit more. You know exactly the order of the cards in your deck, and you can view it at any time when you open this deck. This shows me exactly the order of the deck. And if you look at your discard, it actually follows the same order. So you can use that to plan your turns out 3 or 4 or 5 turns in advance as you need to. So I think I'm going to get the Searing Ruby. This gives more spending power. It goes from the base crystal of 1 ether to 2 ether. And an additional ether that can only be used to gain a spell. Eventually we'll want to use that in order to get some of these better spells. There are some really good spells here. But Searing Ruby at least is a good start there. We'll also want to get a Clouded Sapphire and or a Mage's Talisman at some point. 3 ether is ridiculous, but you cannot afford this in any opening hand because, well, it costs 6 ether and the most we're getting is 1. So we're going to need to eventually get that, but that will be really nice. Yeah, so we'll do that. I don't know what it's waiting for me to do. I have 0 ether. Usually at this point it just auto ends, but I'm not sure why it's not auto ending. We'll just hit end turn. Yeah, it's not yelling at me. All right, we get a Nemesis turn. We get the Haze Spewer. Now, most cards in Sentinels say at the start of the villain turn, at the end of the villain turn, blah, 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 blah. There's no real end of turn or start of turn here, but there are what are called persistent, which is basically at the start of the villain turn. Haze Spewer has this persistent effect that says Gravehold suffers damage equal to this minion's current life, then this minion suffers 1 damage. So this is a 5 HP thing. I guess you can click here to see what its max HP is, like Sentinels. But that means that it doesn't go off immediately, but it will go off on subsequent turns. And we have an Adelheim turn next. So that means there's 1 more Phaedraxa turn, 1 more Adelheim turn, and 1 more Carapace Queen turn. So the worst thing that can happen, well, yeah, the worst thing Nemesis can do are shuffle your decks, which means that you can't know what's going on. One of the worst possible things that can happen is that you have 2 Nemesis turns at the very end. Turn 5 and turn 6 are Nemesis. Then the turn order deck gets shuffled, and then the first turn is a Nemesis turn, and the second turn is a Nemesis turn. The Nemesis just took 4 consecutive turns. That's just how the game goes sometimes. Alright, so Adelheim starts with 2 sparks in hand. That seems to suggest that we'll need to prep both of them. So he has Amethyst Shard. Each of these mages basically has a unique card in their hands, as well as some number of gems of crystals and sparks, which are basic means of getting you started, but they are generally weak, and if you can destroy them later in the game, it's better. The Amethyst Shard, or Amethyst, is Amethyst or Amethyst? I think I remember it being actually a hard T, even though it looks like a TH. Any ally may draw a card and then discard a card in hand. So if we look at Phaedraxa's hand, or Phaedraxa's discard, this is what becomes the deck. But the bottom card of the discard is the Searing Ruby. When we place the discard into the deck, it becomes the top card. So this order is actually consistent with the order that you see when you look at a deck directly. It says bottom card in the top left, top card in the bottom right. When you look at a discard, it says top card in the top left, bottom card in the bottom right. But it still means that these are the order that you'll draw the cards next. So I could get Phaedraxa the Searing Ruby on her next turn, even though you'd normally have to wait 1 turn more to get it. And what we could do with that is actually kind of interesting. So you would draw a card and then you have to discard a card. So we're replacing one of these cards with the Searing Ruby. So something that would be a direct gain, only like this is strictly better off, is replace a crystal with a Searing Ruby. Instead of gaining only 1 ether, you gain 2 ether and an additional that can only be used to gain a spell. But that will take me from 4 ether to 5 ether plus 1 that could be used on a spell. We could get one of these charged up abilities earlier rather than later, and that might actually be pretty good. Because we have this Haze Spewer over here that has 5 HP, and our sparks are only dealing 1 HP right now. But if we can get a spell that can deal 3 damage, that would be pretty nice. And then these 6 ether ones have special effects. So Chaos Arc deals 3 damage plus an additional 2 damage for each prepped spell and an adjacent breach. So if you have a lot of spells in hand, or in play rather, this can get really powerful. And the way that additional damage works is that it's not like you're dealing damage in different instances. It's actually just additive. So when it says deal 3 damage, deal 2 additional damage, that means that if you're dealing 2 additional because you have 1 prepped spell in addition, then that's 5 damage total. 3 plus 2 is 5 dealt to a single source, and that is important when it matters. And the planar insight, deal 2 damage and 1 additional damage for each of your opened breaches. So that says 2, but it really means 3, at least for both of the mages right now, because they each have 1 opened breach. So this is still 3. Phaedraxa can get 2 more open breaches. That would make it 5 for her. Adelheim can get 3 more, so it would become 6 for him. Chaos Arc, depending on its placement, because this is based on spells and adjacent breaches, that can deal 5 damage if it's on one end, 3 damage if it's not next to anything, 7 damage if it's in the middle next to 2 other spells. And technically there's extra damage if it's in these breaches, but don't worry about that just yet. So it seems like Planar Insight is more consistent damage dealing. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Phaedraxa is definitely drawing, and what I was kind of trying to do but never actually got around to is deciding whether I wanted to discard a crystal or a spark. I think I'm just gonna go with the crystal because I can keep that spell in my hand, prep for the next turn, or I'll prep it in the next turn, and then I can buy a better spell and we can get Phaedraxa really charged up with spells. All right. So we have a spell in hand that Adelheim has. He does not have a breach to put it to. None of these breaches will accept the spell. So I either have to open this breach on the far left, and then I'll have this permanently opened, and I'll have 2 breaches. At least these 2 will always be open. But he doesn't really need 2 opened breaches right now, because he only has the 2 sparks. His next draw is going to be all crystals, so he won't have anything to prep for the next turn. Instead, we could focus a breach, and really, there's no difference between focusing breach 2 and opening breach 2. At least, I mean, opening breach 2 is better than focusing breach 2 if we can't do anything else with it. But the reason that it might be better to focus breach 3 is because the last 2 breaches provide a +1 damage on the spells that get prepped there. So getting these opened and then prepping spells in them will give better damage for any spell that goes in there. So these sparks that deal 1 damage can deal 2 damage, or the planar insight that would deal 3 damage could then deal 4 damage, that sort of thing. So it might be better to just focus, because if I open this, I can't really do anything else, but I don't really need to have 2 open breaches right now. I would rather have a better, more powerful breach later in the game. So let's get this focused and then prep that spell there. All right, Phaedraxa, who now has a spending power of 6. So a player's turn actually consists of a casting phase and then the buying phase. I don't remember if it's actually called the buying phase, but the casting phase you have to start with. So these spells that we've prepped, you'd use right now, and I want to get rid of that Haze Spewer because he's going to deal 5 damage and then lesser damage later, but save Gravehold, don't let him deal damage. Play my gems, and you can see here I have 5 ether plus an additional ether that can be used on a spell. Let's grab the planar insight, even though it's a little less strong for Phaedraxa because you can see she has 1 fewer breach than Adelheim, but this will still deal 3 damage and it doesn't rely on adjacent breaches. I guess now I'm having second thoughts. Because getting planar insight up to 5 for Phaedraxa requires her to have 2 open breaches, and that's not going to happen for a while. Getting Chaos Arc, if we can make sure Chaos Arc is accompanied by something else, will already deal 5 damage. I think that's a bit better, right? 3 damage versus 5 damage, right? So let's do that. And the spark, yeah, let's prep that. And I have not been focusing on this, but when the turn ends, you choose the order to discard cards, and because you know exactly what order you'll draw the cards next, it does matter how you discard the cards. Generally, I discard the best cards first so that I get them back earlier, but sometimes you want to be careful of your current deck composition, current discard composition, etc. So we have the Brood Womb. If there is at least 1 husk in play, prevent all damage dealt to this minion. Persistent, place a husk into play. So Brood Womb, an annoying one, especially when husks have 2 HP, as we'll see later. So there are 2 husks in play, so Brood Womb is immune to damage, which is bad. But we haven't really been dealing with the husks because we've been more worried about the Haze Spewer. But we can get him down 2 more. And now we could do 1 damage to him if we can, or we'll let him deal 1 damage to Gravehold and take himself out, and then we could throw the damage elsewhere. But we're not there yet. So 5 ether for Adelheim. I've not done anything about charges yet, but charges cost 2 ether, which is in addition to whatever else you would want to do. But I kind of want to focus on getting my deck a bit better. The Mage's Talisman, when played, it allows you to gain a charge. It also allows an ally to gain a charge. So that's 2 charges, which are essentially 4 ether. I'm spending 5 ether on this, so it's more expensive, but if I play it twice, it's already paid for itself. Except that it's a card, so it kind of, takes up space. But I feel like having 1 of these is really nice. Because if we can get damage prevention or discards of nemesis things, we will have less things to worry about. We don't have any reason to focus right now unless we wanted to worry about opening breaches, but I'm not really particularly fussed about that. We could get the Essence Theft that provides a 3 damage effect to Adelheim. This one doesn't power up at all, so only ever be 3 damage. but it does provide life regeneration, which is very rare. But I'm not sure we need that just yet. We're both at 10 HP. The other option is to focus on, you know, better spending power. Which Adelheim has not done. The only thing Adelheim has done is focused, whereas Phaedraxa has gotten a spell and a gem. But I feel like getting charges for both of these mages is wise. So let's get Mage's Talisman. See what happens there. So that one's gone. Woven Sky. So this is a power card. And power cards... And this is an attack card. Lots of things happening really quickly there. But so a power card is a card that lingers, but it has an eventual effect. The Woven Sky power, in 2 turns, which one of those turns actually elapsed, but 2 Nemesis turns, the effect is Unleash. Any player suffers 4 damage. So Unleash for Carapace Queen is place 2 husks into play, and then any player suffers 4 damage. So 2 husks into play, and a player suffers 4 damage. But power cards sometimes can be gotten rid of via a discard effect. And the discard effect, or not, sorry. A discard effect, which varies based on the card. In this particular case, we can get rid of Woven Sky if we discard 3 cards in hand. Any 3 cards. So if we want Phaedraxa to do it, we could discard 3 crystals if we so wanted to. The other card that we saw that previous turn was a Hatch, which is an attack card. Attack cards just have an immediate effect. Place a husk into play for each turn order card in the turn order discard pile. When that was revealed, there were 2 cards in the discard pile, so put 2 husks into play. So now we are on track level 2. If the Carapace Queen swarms, any player discards prep spell and plays 2 husks into play. Okay. So now let's see what we can do here. So we have this Spark. We can't damage the Brood Womb because he's immune to damage. We could hit the Carapace Queen. The Carapace Queen is at 60 hit points. So it would be nice to be able to reduce that number by 1, I guess. But we do have a bunch of husks here that we have to deal with. Well, we don't have to, but if we ever want to deal with the Brood Womb, we have to take out husks. So I'm going to focus on the husks. And really, we really want to avoid the husks from reaching the player's lose level. We really want to avoid that. So if we want to get rid of the Woven Sky, and we're not actually in a big rush to, because you might notice we've played 2 Nemesis cards, so the remaining cards are all mage cards, so we'll have 4 turns to set up, which is a lot. So we're not in a big rush to do this if we want to do it, and it's probably wise to do it, but you know, if we have something else to do. Phaedraxa might be the best equipped for this at the moment because she has a bunch of crystals. This means we will lose 3 ether, but we'll still have 2 ether. We could purchase a Sifter's Pearl with that, which is at least a little better than a crystal. We do have to be mindful of the fact that we can't really destroy cards that efficiently in this game. We can destroy off of Tourmaline Shard, but that only affects Adelheim. Which I don't think we really want to do just yet anyway, but this at least does say each player reveals the top card of the deck and discards it or returns it to the top. So this will allow us to sift our deck a little more consistently. So yeah, let's discard these 2 crystals. Although I guess I don't really need to discard the crystals, but you know, Tourmaline Shard at least has a slightly extra effect. Oh, I can't even get the Sifter's Pearl because that's 3 ether, right? But I can get the Flexing Dagger. Flexing Dagger is a relic. The next time you focus or open a breach this turn, it costs 3 ether less. So this will allow these to be focused. In fact, 3 ether less means that this focus will be free. This focus will only be 1 ether. I mean, not as many uses as like Adelheim will have, but at least this does have a destroy effect. When there are no other breaches left, or if we need the damage immediately, we can destroy the Flexing Dagger and deal 1 damage. A rare occasion where you can deal damage without actually casting a spell. So if we use this to focus a breach, it will basically be a card that gives us 3 ether, basically. So I think that's worth it. Still haven't done any charging here, but we're not in a rush to do that either. All right, so now Phaedraxa has 2 spells in hand, has 3 gems in hand. So if we want to play the Chaos Arc, we're going to need to focus, and if we focus, we're going to not have any other ether we can use this turn. Now this deals extra damage for prepped spells in adjacent breaches. So we actually, if we want this to be powered up, this breach is opened, so I can already put a spell there. If I focus this breach and put the spell into it, now it sees the spark on the side, and now this Chaos Arc will deal extra damage, and that's really nice. All right, so here's where the discard order matters. So it's waiting for me to do something. I have to decide between Searing Ruby and 2 crystals, and I generally focus on the Searing Ruby first, but you can see how this affects my subsequent turns. After I discard the cards, I will draw the crystal in my hand, and then the discard becomes my draw, and the next card will be the spark, and then I will draw 3 crystals. So then that would be my next turn, and if I don't do any draw afterwards, and then I have to draw 5, then my next hand is going to consist of a flexing dagger, a tourmaline shard, a crystal, and 2 of these cards that I'm discarding right now. So that turn I'm going to have 2 turns from now is going to have 2 ether and a relic. So if I want to have more spending power, I would put the Searing Ruby first. But if, for instance, I know for a fact I don't need that many ether in 2 turns, because in 2 turns I want to be focusing on damage maybe, then I might want to discard the Searing Ruby first. That might make sense to do that. Or not Searing Ruby first, the crystals first, and save the Searing Ruby for the turn 3 turns from now. And now you can see how far ahead you kind of have to think if you want to play the most effectively. But I'm definitely only worried about the turn 2 turns from now, because 3 turns is a bit too far away. 3 turns from now is actually it's not even the next round, it's 2 rounds from now, so it's a very far away prospect. But oh god, it's like thinking ahead in chess. Well, you can play effectively without thinking that far ahead. I haven't really been focusing too much on that so far, but it is good to think about at least your next turn. So these are the cards I have right now. This on the far right is the cards I will have next turn. The only time that you won't draw all 5 cards is if you finish a turn with a card in hand. So like say that I just choose to play my gems. Let's skip this for a moment. I'll rewind. I play these gems, I focus this breach, and then I end my turn. For whatever reason, I don't want to prep these sparks. That's fine. Maybe there's a reason I don't want to prep the sparks. But if I end my turn right now, I discard these 3 cards that I put into play. The Amethyst Shard, the 2 crystals. I still have a hand of 2 cards. I would only draw 3 cards. So when your turn ends, you draw up to 5 cards. So if you leave any cards in hand because you think you don't need to play them, they're going to linger in your hand for the next turn. Sometimes there's a reason to do that, like you don't want to play the super good gem because you don't have a reason to play it right now. You can't buy anything with it, but you can use it in the next turn. But you know, that's something to think about. All right, so then yeah, if I do play the Amethyst Shard, Phaedraxa is going to draw the Flexing Dagger. So if we want to use that Flexing Dagger, or if we want to focus a breach next turn, then we could discard a crystal and focus this breach in the middle for free, because ordinarily it costs 3 ether. But then I'll be left with 3 ether left over. What would Phaedraxa want to use that 3 ether for? The only thing she could buy with that is the Sifter's Pearl, or waste an ether on, or spend it on a charge, but lose the next ether. If we discard the spark, we don't have a spark prepped, which is okay. It only deals 1 damage. We'll still have 4 ether. Since you do have the Flexing Dagger and focusing a little more easily, we could get you a little more focused on spells. Lava Tendril does have a nice at the end of your casting phase deal 1 damage effect, but only at the end of your casting phase while this is prepped. So we'll have a permanent 1 damage rule, otherwise you could deal 3 damage off of it. And I have used this where I put it, I prep it, and I leave it prepped for a bit to just deal 1 damage. And it works well in a Carapace Queen game, because you could just deal 1 damage to a husk and save 3 damage for a minion when you need it. Do I want that, though? Let's say yes. Alright, so now, once again, Adelheim, 3 ether, 2 spells. Let's focus Breach 3 again. And now this is his next turn, so do this to the husks. This takes us down to 4 husks in play. So yeah, our swarm effect is reduced. I can play the Mage's Talisman. That charges up both of Adelheim and Phaedraxa. I can play my gems. I have 4 ether now. Now, since we've been having to focus on focusing, we don't have that many cards. The only card that we've ever gained was the Relic. So it's going to be prudent to want to get something that will help out with spending power, because since we've had to spend 2 of our turns spending our ether to focus so that we could prep both of our spells, it's not really wise to get more spells because we're not going to have places to put it. We're really going to need to get better spending power for Adelheim. Do we want to get the Searing Ruby? Do we want to get the Sifter's Pearl? Well, Searing Ruby could be an additional ether. Searing Ruby could sift through our deck. Benefits to both, for sure. We could also just charge with this. If we charge this twice, we'll be 2 charges away from getting this fully charged up. And there are, reasons that you might only want to focus on charging, but I feel like I want to get a little more spending power first. So let's get the Searing Ruby, and maybe use that eventually to get another spell. So, have I been describing too much? Have I been doing a good job? Should I shut up and just play the game? All right, so here's what's a little annoying is I put this Chaos Arc here, hoping to be able to use it, but I can't really use it that effectively. I could do 5 damage to Carapace Queen. I could do 0 damage to the Brood Womb because there's husks in play. If I do it to the husks and I take 1 damage, then the additional damage doesn't actually do anything, which is extra annoying. I can relax some of the explanations for the sake of others. Well, if you want me to expand on anything, feel free to ask. I will be happy to respond to anything, but I hope that I've gotten the basics of the game explained. If there's anything that's still confusing, feel free to prod. So I think it's still better to use this to take out all the husks. I could do 1 damage on the Brood Womb. We absolutely need to get rid of him. The problem is, Phaedraxa's next turn, she's not going to have any spells. Adelheim's next turn, he has no spells prepped. He can prep a Spark, but unless he gets both of his turns before Carapace Queen's next turn, this Spark's not going to do anything except take out a husk. So I don't know that it's actually worth it to do extra damage to take out a husk if I'm just not going to be able to deal with a Brood Womb that effectively. So let's focus the majority of this damage on the Carapace Queen. That puts the Carapace Queen down to 55. There's actually 2 ways you can win the game in Aeon's End. The main way is to reduce the Nemesis down to 0 HP, like you would a villain in Sentinels. The other way is to deck the Nemesis, which is to exhaust all cards in their draw pile, because they don't shuffle like they would in Sentinels. If we get through this entire deck of cards, somehow, then the Nemesis is decked. But however, we still have to get rid of all the cards that are in play after we deck them. And yeah, then once there are no cards in play or to draw, then we've won the game, even though the Nemesis still has hit points. That's the alternate victory condition. But bear in mind another thing. In the lower right of each card is a number. That number tells you the tier of the card. And the Nemesis deck is actually a bit structured. It starts with tier 1 cards, then it turns into tier 2, and then tier 3. Higher tier cards are worse. So if you're going to deck the Nemesis, you're going to have to deal with some terrible cards at the very end of the deck. Keep that in mind. But yeah, using sparks to take out the husk, and then this. So that's my gems. That's my relic. Let's reduce the next cost by 3. What are we gonna purchase here? I don't feel like I'm in an immediate rush to get to Aspect's Rune because there's nothing immediately that deals damage. We'll probably want that more once we're at tier 3. I want to get more Searing Rubies. So that we can get these better spells. Our next turn we're going to have 6 + 1 ethers. There's a little bit of excess here, unfortunately. But yeah, we really need to get more spells, actually. So maybe it's better to just get a Lava Tendril here. I think that was what we were thinking about anyway. Yeah, that was our goal. And then we can do our focus there. Now Adelheim. Play the gems. This was draw a card and then discard a card in hand. You're gonna draw a spark. Yeah, and we said you had an ether left over if we're gonna purchase a 6 ether spell. So we can go ahead and get you that spark and discard a crystal. And now you still have 6 ether that you can use to get Chaos Arc or Planar Insight. So that's good. Spell for Adelheim, 4 ether left over. We got you a Searing Ruby already. What are we going to draw next? We're going to draw the Searing Ruby next turn. So you're going to have 4 + 1 ether. So we got the 2 sparks not in the same turn now, so that's good. We're not having to spend our money on focusing when we can't really do that. So what do we want to do here? Lava Tendril for you, even though we said you don't really have many spaces to put spells at the moment. But I feel like being able to get 2 spells in a turn. I mean, this focus is this breach is really cheap to open anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a little spell greedy there, but we'll have to think about better money later. Carapace Queen swarms. Carapace Queen puts 4 husks into play. Next turn is a Carapace Queen turn. Third one, put a husk into play. The attack card, Unleash. Any player suffers 3 damage and draws a card. So the Unleash put 2 more husks into play. And now all of a sudden we have 10 husks. We were at 2. We're now back at 10. Great. But that's because we had two consecutive Nemesis turns again. Now, this card actually provides a benefit. We can draw a card off of this. So who wants to draw a card? We are 1 card away from a Chaos Arc for Phaedraxa. 1 card away from a Crystal for Adelheim. So that's not really a good card for Adelheim unless he can do something significantly more with that. He has 4 + 1 ether currently. If he has 5 + 1 ether, we can get a 6 ether spell, which is actually kind of amusing. But if we get Phaedraxa that Chaos Arc, especially with the spark that's right there, we'll be able to do another 5 damage Chaos Arc. And there are a lot of husks we do have to deal with, so I feel like Phaedraxa makes more sense. And now it's a Phaedraxa turn, so play the gems. So now we do want to start thinking about using this effect. Suffer 1 damage and destroy a card in hand. You don't necessarily want to take the damage. I mean, you don't really want to take damage, but these crystals clog up your deck eventually. And the sparks too. They're fine to start the game with, but once you start getting better spells and better gems, you don't really want those cards in your deck. Now, is it worth taking the damage to destroy? And by the way, when you destroy a card, it's permanently gone. Destroyed cards are permanently removed from the game, so destroying a card in hand means that you'll never draw that card ever again. But in a deck building game, card destruction is very powerful because you can, if you use it to your advantage, you can weed out the bad cards or the cards that were useful at one point but aren't useful anymore, and keep the more valuable cards for later plays. In fact, it might be best to have your deck consist of only 5 cards, because then every single turn you'll draw those same 5 cards. There's a reason why most deck builders have you start with like 10 or 15 card decks, because they don't want you to start with the same 5 cards, because that's too powerful. So what, you're currently at 4 + 1 ether. You would be able to get the essence stuff with that, but the problem is though is that we just bought you a spell, and we've been saying we need to be careful with your spells, because you currently have 3 spells, and you currently have 13 cards, and you only have 1 opened breach. So I feel like even though you have 4 + 1 ether, we're still going to only want to get a gem off of that, and we can get the Sifter's Pearl, which we haven't been doing yet. But if I destroy a crystal, we'll still have 3 ether I can use to get the Sifter's Pearl, which is beneficial to both players. Allows us to discard any crystals in our hand. So yeah, I think Adelheim can willingly destroy that crystal, and now his deck has 12 cards in it, and 3 of them are spells. Alright, so 5 + 1 ether and then 2 spells. So in order for me to use this Chaos Orc, I need to open this breach, but that's really nice because that gives a +1. But now I have 2 + 1 ether, the +1 doesn't matter. I have 2 ether left over, and I already have a Flexing Dagger, and I don't really want to have multiple of those. Especially because the only other breach we have left is this one that is already halfway open, so I don't want another one of those. The only place that makes sense is a charge. Alright, now Adelheim. Let's damage the husk. We need to try to get out of the Gravehold suffers 5 damage clause. Gems. Mage's Talisman, so we now have a little more charge here. Prep that spell. And then we said we were going to get you that Sifter's Pearl. So let's see. So this is important because actually we have 9 cards currently. So my next hand is going to be 2 crystals, a 3rd crystal, an amethyst shard, and a lava tendril. Which means that the turn after that, which is going to be Adelheim's 2nd turn in his next round, he's going to have 2 crystals, a Sifter's Pearl, and a Spark. So he's currently going to have 4 ether. If there's something we know we're going to get with that 4 ether, then we don't need to worry too much about getting something else. But if we discard the Searing Ruby, then Adelheim will have 6 ether on that 2nd turn. 6 ether will get that Clouded Sapphire. And we said we wanted to get those eventually. It provides excellent spending power. 3 ether is ridiculous in a single card. It also provides charges to an ally, which means that we'll be able to charge up Aspect's Rune a little more consistently, and we'll be able to prevent damage to players or Gravehold a little more consistently, which is nice. So I think I want to discard the Searing Ruby. Instead, I could also discard the Mage's Talisman. I'll have 4 ether, which I could use to get, I don't know, a Searing Ruby, and then I'll be able to charge both allies. But I want to get that Clouded Sapphire, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so now it's Phaedraxa. So here, this is dealing 6 damage. And then we're going to have these happening as well at a later turn. So yeah, we should be able to get rid of the husks and hopefully get rid of the Broodwomb in a future turn. So I do want to damage a husk and suffer damage to damage 6 husks, because we need to get rid of those husks in order to deal with Broodwomb. And then this. Alright, so gems, and then reduce the next cost by 3, so we probably want to spend ether there if we can, although we don't actually have much spending power now. We don't have to actually use that. I could actually, let's think about whether I actually want to hold on to that card. So we're going to prep this, we're going to prep that. But if I want to use that for 1 damage, I'm going to put it over there. If I'm going to leave the Lava Tendril prepped just to deal 1 damage to a husk, I don't want it taking up a slot that also deals +1 damage, because that +1 damage only affects the cast, and not that extra damage at the end of the turn. So now I have 2 ether left over. I could charge with that. Now, if I keep this flexing dagger in hand to play on the next turn, I will have 2 3 crystals and a searing ruby. That's going to give me 5+1 spending power. But if I get rid of this flexing dagger, I will get a tourmaline shard that will be 6+1 ether. And I could also get the clouded sapphire for Phaedraxa. And I definitely want this on both of the mages. I definitely want multiples of these in both of the mages, probably eventually. Maybe not necessarily always, though, but because you can't destroy the crystals unless you're Phaedraxa. Phaedraxa can destroy them. Or no, Adelheim destroy. Yeah, Adelheim can destroy his crystals, no problem. Phaedraxa can't in this game. But definitely still having one of these because that will charge up Adelheim. So we want to get that. So I think we do want to use this to get rid of it. I could just destroy this and deal 1 damage. Is that going to really benefit us? I'm not going to do that. I could do 1 damage to destroy the card, hit the husk with that. That will leave 1 husk in play. If Adelheim goes next, he could take out that husk, but he wouldn't be able to take out the minion. If Phaedraxa goes next, we already have damage that would take out the husk. But this wouldn't take out the Broodwomb. I'm just going to focus, because we'll almost have this charged up, which is nice. So let's see. So this is going to be a card that joins 2 crystals and 2 spells. So there's going to be a similar problem on this turn in 2 turns where you'll have, although we do have the amethyst chart here, so that's going to change things a little bit. So it's actually going to be offset by 1. Because you're going to draw crystal. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because when is this going to happen? I can't really game that well. Let's discard the flexing dagger first. Carapace Queen swarms twice or any player suffers 4 damage. Here's where being able to make ourselves immune to damage or discarding this card will be nice. This is a tier 2 card, so cards are starting to get a little worse. If you swarm twice, you're going to put 4 husks into play, and that's going to take us to Gravehold suffers 5 damage. So the second swarm, Gravehold will suffer 5 damage. Now, Gravehold is still relatively healthy. He could weather 5 damage. It can weather with 5 damage, rather. But certainly, Phaedraxa and Adelheim have suffered a little bit of damage now. They have 15 HP between them. 4 HP out of 15 is a little more significant. If you're still listening, Hoey, I will explain something extra about extinction in this game, or not extinction, but exhaustion. When a mage goes to 0 HP, they become exhausted, I believe. I think is the word. Exhausted means that, well, when a mage gets exhausted, several things occur. So first, they lose, I don't know actually the correct order. They lose all their charges. All their charges are gone. Then you destroy one of your breaches. It could be one that's not opened, but you have to destroy it and it'll be gone for the rest of the game. Then any excess damage that was used, so if Adelheim, who's at 9 HP, took a 10 HP hit, that's an excess of 1. That extra damage goes to Gravehold, but doubly. So that 1 damage that was excess becomes 2 damage and goes to Gravehold. So it's 2 damage to Gravehold. Now, exhausted mages still function in the game. They can still recharge this up and use it. They can still use their other breaches. But they are no longer considered the mage with the lowest HP for those purposes that say that. So that would mean anything that says target the mage with the lowest HP, that will always go to Phaedraxa. But if there's an effect that says deal any player damage, and you decide for whatever reason to damage Adelheim with that, then the damage that would be dealt to Adelheim instead goes to Gravehold with doubly so, like if it were excess damage. So if Adelheim would be dealt 4 damage while exhausted, that becomes 8 damage to Gravehold. So that is something to have to consider. And if both of our mages get exhausted, we lose. In a single player game, if you get exhausted, then you still keep going, so there's no rule for that. But in 2, 3, or 4 players, if every mage gets exhausted, it's game over. Hey Pirate, welcome to Dolphin's Dive. We're explaining Aeon's End. It's the Aeon's End learning stream, and Hoey has been really getting a lot of insight here. Hoey has actually volunteered to lead the next game, believe it or not. What? I don't really want you to swarm twice though, because that's gonna put so many husks in play. And then Gravehold suffers 5 damage. I'm gonna go ahead and just do 4 damage to Adelheim. I'm not happy about that, but we can heal ourselves eventually. Thanks for volunteering, Hoey. All right, so what are we gonna do here? I'm gonna hit husk. Gems. Draw and discard. So this is any ally may draw. So I could skip this. You are drawing a crystal. You don't really care for that, but if you draw that crystal, that offsets you by 1 there, which we said would be nice. Although it's actually not doing that much for us after all. Let's go ahead and draw and discard just because that sifts through your deck even faster. Prep that spell. We have 4 ether. You have sifters, you have searing ruby, you do not have clouded sapphire. I feel like I was going to get a clouded sapphire for you and then I didn't. Or am I getting that next? I'm getting that next turn. That's what's happening. Okay, that's what I was thinking of. Okay. So we're getting the clouded sapphire next turn. You're not going to need to focus there, so that's good. I don't really want to clog up my deck with too many of these. Spending power is nice, but you don't want to get it super clogged up. Gonna get that in 2 turns. I feel like I just want to focus because we kind of need to start mitigating these factors a little more. All right, Adelheim. This deals 3 damage. I think here is where, oh shoot, if I don't play this, then I lose. Then I have the spark that I can't prep, and if I focus, then I can't buy. All right, I'm gonna take out the husks. The hope is that Phaedraxa goes next, and we can use Phaedraxa spells to take out the Brood Womb finally. There's my gems. And that, so this gives me, well, we already knew what we were drawing next, but I could choose to discard these, which will sift our deck, right? Which still doesn't matter for Phaedraxa, but discarding that at least will allow us to get to shuffle, or not shuffle, but actually I guess it's not really doing anything, but it makes me feel like I'm doing something. I'm going to return that to hand because I want that. 6 ether, I want that. We now finally have a clouded sapphire. All right, so 9 cards. So what's happening on the next draws? We're getting these 2 and then those 3. So Crystal, Clouded Sapphire, and Lava Tendril. Does damage that overkills the husk spill onto the queen? It does not. So the 3 damage I did over here was actually only 2 damage. It only killed the husks. The only spillover effect is from mages onto Gravehold when they're exhausted. It's never spilled over on the Nemesis side unless there's a card that states so, like the additional rules here. Yeah, so you're gonna have Crystal. Are you gonna also... Not gonna have that effect. Oh, 6 ether is enough to get anything on the board. So I don't really need to discard these super ones. But if I do 7 plus 1, I can get like a 6 ether spell and charge. I'm gonna discard a crystal first. Maybe that makes sense. Of course you didn't go in the order I wanted you to. Unleash twice, and Gravehold suffers 3 damage, or place Haze Spewer back into play. Well, Haze Spewer. Gravehold suffers damage equal to this minion's current life, then this minion suffers 1 damage. I mean, he's not that hard to get rid of, unlike the stupid Broodwomb. The problem is, we don't know when we're going to be able to best deal with it, but if Haze Spear goes off and deals 5 damage, that's only slightly worse than Gravehold suffers 3 damage, but we will have not 5 husks in play. So I guess Haze Spear is better, even though it's a target that we now have to deal with, but 4 husks is 4 HP anyway, so 4 HP and 2 damage, 4 HP and 5 damage, or 5 HP and maybe less damage. That's the question. Actually, I can already reduce it down. So, like, this has a +1 on it. If I attack the husk here, it's wasted damage. If I do it to the Haze Spear, now it has 3 HP, so it'll only deal 3 damage. If I leave the Lava Tendril there, I can now deal 1 damage to that husk. I could have used the 3 damage to take out the Haze Spear, though, so is that better or worse? Probably better. That 1 husk isn't doing anything by itself, so let's take out the thingamabobber. All right, gems. You are now much lower in health than we were last time. If I'm not going to do that, and we want you to get the Clouded Sapphire now. Okay, so 5 and 5. So now this decision is a wash because this will just be your hand 3 turns from now. All right, now it's random. Phaedraxa. All right, gems. Flexing dagger. You only have 2 ether. Would you rather charge or deal damage with that? Or focus with that? I'd rather keep it, honestly, and I'm gonna have that Clouded Sapphire next turn. Nice. And I don't want to hold on to it. I'm just gonna go ahead and waste it again. Let's put this there, put that there. And we can charge. Although I do have to be mindful, there is a Mage's Talisman there. So, yeah, let's not charge then. Let's focus, because this Mage's Talisman is going to charge me up, and it's a wasted charge if I'm already maxed on charges. See, I'm going to charge it up, so I didn't need to do the thing. All right, so let's go ahead and hit that husk again. Get it out. Get this set up. So now, if we get a terrible card, we can discard it instead of having to deal with the consequences. And if we know we're going to be dealt damage in a turn because of a persistent effect, we could prevent damage. This decision has to be made before we know what happens in that turn. This decision can be made after we see the card. So Ethereal Ward is a little better, I'd say, but they both have good uses. All right, so we want you to draw. You would get a Searing Ruby. You currently have 5 ether. We could turn that into 6 ether and you get another spell, because you're at the point where this breach is almost opened and now you just want to be able to keep prepping spells. That will also set you off by 1, but that's probably fine. So Let's have you draw and discard the crystal. All right, 3 ether for you. Prep the spark. What do you want to do with your 3 ether? You can't spend on the charge. You've maxed out. I already have a Sifter's Pearl, and I don't want to get super bogged down with those things. I guess let's focus this. Because eventually you're going to have spells, I'm sure. We need you to have places to put the spells. Let's see, so 9. So it's going to be Searing Ruby, Sifter's Pearl, Crystal, and Spark. So that's enough ether for you to get a 6 ether spell with that. So we could discard the relic first. Pizza is here. Yummy. All right, so now here's where it's a little annoying. We have this Clouded Sapphire. We could, so this is going to prompt every single turn now. We don't have to worry about it at all this turn. But this Clouded Sapphire that we're going to use to gain a charge, well, now we can't use it to gain a charge because Phaedraxa is fully charged up. We could hold it in hand, but our ideal was to spend 6 ether. Hold on. If I hold on to this and I have 3 ether, I could open this breach. I could prep that spell to this breach. It's not going to matter right away because you've already used your second turn. But how is that going to affect your next turn? If we hold on to 3 crystals, or if we spend the 3 crystals, so we only have the Clouded Sapphire, you would have so much spending power on that next turn. It's kind of a waste because you're already getting 6 ether on your next turn. Okay, we'll play the gems, get the Clouded Sapphire. Even though we're not getting that charge, we'll at least have another charge there. And we have to be mindful of the fact that we don't want Clouded Sapphires really to be next to each other, even though they're really good ether, because allies only gain 1 charge per turn, since this is only the first time you played a Clouded Sapphire this turn, so you can't use it to double up if they're next to each other. So, hold on. Actually, currently it doesn't really matter because 3 plus 2 is there. Unless there's an effect over here where you're going to draw a card. Or over here, and even Sifter's Pearl could do that, which you probably would just discard this because it's not that useful. So let's discard a crystal first and then a Clouded Sapphire. That seems to make sense. So let's skip this ability. Although we do have this here, but we can use this on another turn. Skip that ability. To discard, lose 4 charges, power 2, Carapace Queen Swarms, unleash Carapace Queen Swarms. Ah, geez, my allergies are really acting up right now. My nose is really irritated right now. I could discard it right now, but that would spend 5 charges. Could instead have Phaedraxa do 4 of her charges on her next turn to get rid of this. It's not going to go off until the next round. Even if the next turn is a Nemesis card, it will still tick down only by 1, and we'll still have a turn to deal with this. We don't really want this to go off. Swarm, Unleash Swarm is bad. Swarm will put 4 husks into place. Unleash will put 2. Swarm, Gravehold will suffer 5 damage. So that's 6 husks, and Gravehold suffers 5 damage. Currently, it will go up if there is something else. I think I'm gonna leave this because I want to save that for a card that we can't deal with otherwise. Like this one, husks have 2 life, which is terrible. Foul Multitudes, one of the Carapace Queen's bad cards. Husks have 2 life. Damaged husks heal to full life at the end of each turn. Immediately unleash Power 3 Carapace Queen Swarms. So this card is going to linger for 3 turns. You can't even discard it. It doesn't have a discard effect. But for 3 turns, husks will have 2 life. And if a husk survives after a turn with 1 life, it heals back to full. So imagine that these husks, instead of being 1 HP, now have 2 HP. And remember that we've been, you know, able to deal with them effectively with sparks. Well, now think about a spark not being able to take out a husk, and think about how bad that gets. We're definitely using that ability to get rid of that card. That's why I wanted to save the charges. We absolutely needed to do that. But now the good news is, yeah, we can block the sun. We have a Clouded Sapphire that will give a charge to Adelheim. We have options here. This has 6 damage here. Again, it's such a waste if I throw it over there. This spark, well, let's not use the spark yet, but that will only take out 1 husk, and the Brood Womb is still annoyingly immune to damage. But I think it's better to throw the big hit on a Carapace Queen. I know that John typically decks the Carapace Queen, but I can't frown upon doing 6 damage to Carapace Queen. Alright, so spells, or gems, that gives you that charge. Spells, let's not put that there. Let's put it over there because we could still do the extra damage if we need it. 6 ether, you already have a Clouded Sapphire. This could deal 5 damage, but this will also deal 5 damage. But if I don't really want 2 Chaos Arcs next to each other because they don't synergize well. Let's just get you a Planar Insight. You have 1 ether left over. Oh yeah, do this. Yeah, I gotta lose those charges. Alright. So now Adelheim. This would be a waste of damage, so let's keep it. Finish casting, damage that husk. Play the gems. So I think we're gonna discard here. Although actually no, this come on. Any ally may draw a card and then discard a card in hand. So welcome back. I mean, that sifts through decks a little faster, so I'm gonna leave that on your deck. I'm gonna discard that crystal. I think that's going to offset you a little too much, but we'll see what happens. Play that. We've gotten our charges. We have to either hold on to that spark or we use it. Again, I have a situation where I could spend the ether on a 6 ether spell, but then I'll have this left over in my hand, and I would like to have that Clouded Sapphire next turn. I want to open that. Now this has a +1, that's nice. I have 2, there's no 3 ether spells, it's only 2, so I might as well charge with that. Can't really go wrong with charging, really. Alright, so 9 cards, so we have 6 ether already, so I'm going to discard the big thing and then put the Sifter's Pearl and then that. Alright. Unleash twice. The player with most prep spells discards their most expensive prep spell. Well, that's annoying. It's going to be either one of these, either one of those. Unleash twice, any player suffers 2 damage. Well, we just got a bunch of those, and imagine that these guys had 2 HP. It'd be so much worse. Okay, 2 damage, let's throw that to Phaedraxa. Okay, we have no more Carapace Queen turns. So many husks, we have to deal with them. I'm gonna do damage to take out those. We're getting really low on health. I have to be especially mindful of that. I don't think that +1 is worth doing the extra damage for, but we've lowered down the threat level to a little better. Gems, do not take damage. 4 ether, reduce the cost by 3. That's now 1 to open. I think that's worth it. And then charge. We need to get these charged up so we can avoid those effects from going off. Alright, Adelheim. Yeah, I don't want to take damage to damage more husks, but it's only 1 damage at a time, though. Okay, you draw. Oh yeah, Cloud Sapphire, nice. So where does that put you at? You have 5 ether right now. You have 3 spells. That's really good. We can ditch a crystal and then you'd be able to do something with 4 ether, I'm sure. We're probably going to need to start considering the essence theft. That extra life is going to come in handy. But for now, let's get you a 6 ether spell, I'd say. Planar Insight, a little better for Adelheim. Okay, gems. That is going to do super damage. That's now 7 damage. That could do a lot. I guess I'm kind of resigned to this Brood Womb permanently being in the game. Let's get you charged. Oh no, we have that coming up. So let's not do that then. 4 ether. Oh, the tendril. Okay. I kind of don't want to bother with the husks at this point. Kind of just want to go after Carapace Queen. We do have a lot of damage here. We do have a lot of means of charging. We can prevent damage and discard Nemesis cards. So if Nemesis Queen were to do something like Swarm, we could avoid that. So maybe we just ignore the husks and we just go for broke. Which means we want to start getting these better spells for Adelheim. Although we are going to need to open these eventually. You still have... Don't you still have... Did you ever get... Did we never get the flexing dagger for Adelheim? I guess not. Yeah, we never did. Well, let's get you the essence stuff so that you can heal. That seems wise to me. Okay. Let's skip the ability there. Needle Maw, Persistent Gravehold suffers 2 damage. We could make ourselves immune to damage, but that's only 2 damage. Gravehold's very healthy relative to us. I might just be willing to let Needle Maw stay. To discard 2 cards in hand that each cost 4 ether or more. Power 2, unleash twice. Gravehold suffers 3 damage. That is actually rather tame. I'm not going to get rid of that. And now it's going to keep asking me to do that. Alright, so what are we going to do here? We're going to focus so much on damaging, because we can do 8 damage with this. This is going to deal 6 damage, and then this is 1 damage, and now Carapace Queen is down to 32. That's really nice. Then we have this Lava Tendril, we have a Spark. I kind of don't want to waste... Well, I guess you're not going to have spell on the next turn. Let's put these in the +1s. Because we could just do more damage to Carapace Queen, right? So then you have 4+1. Let's get you that essence stuff too. Let's get people healed a little more easily. Damage, damage. Actually, if it doesn't make a difference whether I do it now or later, let's actually hold on to the Lava Tendril. I guess it would go back into my hand later, but I mean... I kind of feel like unless I'm going to need that space to put a spell, Lava Tendril's better off dealing 1 damage. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. I can deal 1 damage with this. Yeah. Do not take damage. You are hurting. We could actually use up Aspect's rune to have a player not suffer damage but still destroy a card in hand. I don't know if that's worth losing that ability for. You have 4 ether now. That is almost not worth it. I mean, I think at this point I don't care about Lava Tendril. I want to focus on the spells on the bottom. I don't really want my deck to get clogged up with any more gems. Unless they're Clouded Sapphire. That's the only one that might still have a use. This is just a waste of a card for Phaedraxa. It just deals a damage 1 time, but that could have been something else, and... kind of feel like actually... like, if I use Phaedraxa's ability, but then I spend my 4 ether on 2 charges, it's better than not spending this on anything, right? Because what's gonna happen, you're not gonna be able to charge. Well, I mean, if you spend your ether on charging, that's one thing, but you'll be able to charge Phaedraxa twice if you have a turn before Phaedraxa, and that would help. So let's actually do something incredibly silly. Let's use Phaedraxa's ability to make us immune to damage. And then you can take no damage and destroy a crystal in hand. Yeah! I don't know if that's necessarily wise, but you should be able to get that charged back up. Oh boy. Return those! I mean, we knew what they were, but return those! Alright, and you're gonna have that spell. This powers up if there's more opened breaches. But on the other hand, I could get another essence stuffed. Keep ourselves alive. Maybe. Alright, we're just going for broke on Carapace Queen right now. Alright, 5 ether, and then these spells. I'm gonna charge. And you're only gonna charge. Yeah, so let's do double charge, and then Adelheim will be able to get me back up. Okay. This is currently dealing 3 damage. If I open Breach 2, that would deal 4 damage, plus an additional 1 because of the +1. Yeah, we're almost done, actually. But there's still going to be 2 Carapace Queen turns, so I do have to be mindful of that. But let's open that just to charge that a little more. And then you still have 3 ether left over that I don't want to spend. End the turn. We're just waiting to get to this game, to win this game. This is Phaedraxa's turn. You don't need to use that ability. Big damage hit there, and then this ability there. Play the gems, prep the spells. 3+1 ether does like nothing for me. I'll just end my turn. So what turn is next? It's a Carapace Queen turn. So we could avoid the Baneful Crux from going off if we use Phaedraxa's ability on the next Carapace Queen turn. Any player places their discard pile on top of their deck, shuffles it, and then destroys the top card of the deck, then unleash twice. Do we want to avoid that card from going off? I think it doesn't matter, because if Phaedraxa goes, she wins. Oh no, it's actually Adelheim that's next. If Adelheim goes, he deals 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 1 is 6, and that's not enough to win the game. Can I explain the difference between opening and focusing? So this breach over here in Adelheim's area is still closed. A breach that's closed, you can't put a spell into it. But if you focus that breach, on the turn that you focus it, you can temporarily put a spell in it. You can prep a spell to it temporarily, that on your next turn, you would then have to cast. A breach that is opened, you can always put a spell to, and you can leave spells in there. And I've done that a couple of times in this game with Lava Tendril. Because the rule, while prepped at the end of your casting phase, deal 1 damage. Well, this has to be prepped and has to persist through your casting phase in order to be able to have that go off. So that you'll never be able to do that while it's in the breach that you just focused. Focusing is generally cheaper, but it's a temporary effect. However, focusing does make the breach a little more, slightly more open. This is currently at a 1/4 open stage. If I focus this breach, it goes to half open. If I focus this breach again, it goes into 3/4 open, and then one more focus would open it. If I open it at this point, it's very expensive. Opening gets progressively less expensive as you focus the breach as well, which is why I focused the breach on turns that I wasn't necessarily going to prep a spell to it. But focusing is a more of a temporary measure, but also does provide a progress towards eventually opening it. So currently Phaedraxa has all of her breaches open, and Adelheim has his first 3 breaches opened, and his 4th one is still mostly closed. So yeah, here's where a shuffle mechanic is here. Places their discard pile on top of their deck, shuffles it, and then destroys the top 4 cards of their deck. And you also unleash twice, which is going to put us actually towards a very bad effect. This is going to be a bit of a gamble at this point, because if I think I can survive 2 more turns regardless of this effect, then I could let that go off and discard the next. I guess the question is, do I expect the next one to be better or worse than this? This is a tier 3, which means we're at the point where the cards are just brutally awful. On the other hand, if we get a minion or a power card, it doesn't matter what it does, because we'll win. It's not going to do an immediate effect. So maybe it's better to gamble on it not being a power card next turn. So I'm going to go ahead and use Adelheim's ability to get rid of that, and then Carapace Queen goes off. I'm going to use this ability to stop 3 damage to Gravehold. Oh, there's also an Unleash twice on here. Oh, jeez. Lots of bad things happening. 2 discard, destroy 2 prep spells that each cost 3 ether or more, power 1, unleash 3 times. Power 1 is really bad, because sometimes Nemesis have 2 consecutive turns and you can't do anything about it. But that's okay. If the next turn is an ally turn, we're fine. If the next turn is a Nemesis turn and they swarm, we're dead. It's gamble time. How much do you think we're going to be able to avoid them from swarming? I guess actually, if we're especially worried about that, actually, let's rewind. Because currently we're at the stage where we could lose if they swarm, right? If I use Planar Insight, this is dealing 6 damage. I could take out 6 of these husks to bring us down to this stage. Now, the Brood Womb adds an additional husk, and Needle Maw doesn't really matter. Unleash 3 times is going to add 6. So actually, we still lose at that point. The problem is, what happens if the Nemesis plays a card that says Swarm? Because we can't do a darn thing. And we don't know what's happening next. But if Phaedraxa goes, she has more than enough damage to take out Carapace Queen already. If Adelheim goes off, well, he only has these 2 spells. Are there any ways to see the top Nemesis card? There are very few mechanics that do that. And actually, an upcoming update to the game, or at least the upcoming update to the digital version, that will feature the not branching claw. Is it branching claw? No, that's Spirit Island, right? The Nameless expansion, that's what it is. It's going to add a relic, I believe, or a spell, I don't remember which, that looks at the top 2 cards of the Nemesis pile and lets you return them in any order. But that is, you know, not a usual mechanic. I feel like I'm damned one way or the other. I guess the other problem is there's 2 damage here, and when you unleash 3 times... I guess we could discard this instead of using this. Which is kind of... It's also a destroy, which is annoying. I mean, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter if they're discarded or drawn or whatever. They're not going to matter. But it's a wash one way or the other, because we can't get past that stage where we're at. This is, I feel like no matter what, we're going to have this iffiness right now. If I leave this here, I prep this spell, and I use this to destroy... I can't destroy these, right? Yeah, I have to destroy both of these. And they're destroy, which means they're permanently out of the game. So now Carapace Queen's not unleashing 3 times. However, instead of doing that, we could have done 6 damage to the husk, which is the same thing. So I don't know what's better. I feel like either way, if Carapace Queen... I don't think there's anything I can really do to avoid this other than maybe having played Phaedraxa's turn a little differently. But I can't rewind that far. You can only rewind to the last time that information was gained, which is, I think, when Adelheim's turn was revealed. Well, technically it's not information gained, but... alright. Don't be a Carapace Queen turn. There's a 4 out of 6 chance that it's not a Carapace Queen turn, in which case it's fine. Then, if it's not a Carapace Queen turn, or if it is a Carapace Queen turn, there's a chance that she doesn't play a card that says immediately Swarm. Alright, we lost that battle. Immediately unleash twice. Here's where Gravehold starts taking some damage. Alright. Whew. Power 2, discard half of the husks in play rounded up. Gravehold suffers 2 damage for each husk discarded this way. Carapace Queen swarms. There are 15 husks. Gravehold suffers 8 damage, and then Gravehold suffers 5 damage. Oh boy. But now we win. Oh boy, that was crazy. I mean, I definitely probably got a bit too aggressive too early, but we were also quite hurty. We couldn't really deal ourselves damage to take out more than 1 husk. The mages are like, we won! And the city is a rebel. We won! Alright, so I'm still undefeated against Carapace Queen. That's a very important fact. I've also doubled my win rate with Adelheim and Phaedraxa, so that's really nice. These global statistics make me laugh because apparently everyone sucks at this game. Everyone loses twice as often as they win, apparently, as a whole. But yeah. We only used 4 abilities that game. That's actually rather few, I feel like. All right, we saved the world from the Carapace Queen. Yay! All right, it's now 8:40. Rather longer Aeon's End game because I went into more detail about my plays, but hopefully you learned something about this game. And if you like this style of play where I just explain literally everything, I could try to do it more often, but I don't want to do it every single game because otherwise I will get exhausted. And when I get exhausted, you get twice as exhausted. So, all right, let's go out of Aeon's End and let's start up One Deck Dungeon because this is my Aeon's End One Deck Dungeon stream. So then I need to change the game on Steam to One Deck Dungeon. That's that. Need to change the game on Twitch to One Deck Dungeon. All right, and that should be updated. Let's do a sanity check. Since last time I tried this, it didn't work. Yep, One Deck Dungeon. All right. And then Steam is going to take like 5 minutes to actually update. All right, so where are we in One Deck Dungeon? Lots more statistics here. Anything screaming out at me saying I need to play you now? Yeti, I am 3 to 5. Lich, I am 3 to 8. But Lich is the one that's awful, right? Lich is any 2s rolled are immediately discarded. Oh. It's not that bad. He says, and then rolls only 2s. Let's do Lich. So what are we gonna do in Lich's tomb then? This is a very balanced backside. We need lots of mana on the front. You know who's really good at mana? Caliana. I haven't played with Caliana in a long time. I generally play 2 players. Do I want to play single player for funsies? We currently have you fully decked in aggression, so we get that extra heroic die. We get extra 2s. Rerolls, Fairy Fire, gain an X strength and X agility. That seems really nice. And we could also couple that with Force Bolt, which I believe is the better of the mana skills. The other option is reduce the difficulty of each armor box by 1. I mean, that would reduce those permanently over the entire course of the game. Although it's only combats, right? Well, it doesn't matter because that is combat, right? Yeah, it's combat skill. Those are combat squares. It wouldn't reduce those 4s though. Let's just play Caliana, fearless. In Lich, there you go. This is a standard dungeon. Do you want to go hybrid? I like hybrid. I'm gonna go with Cure and Aid. That's my go-to for potions. Cure, heal 1 damage whenever a potion token is used or gained, or heal 1 damage anytime. Aid, increase 2 dice by 1 each. So the conjunction of them means increase 2 dice by 1 each and regain 1 hit point. Also, when you gain a potion, you heal 1. Actually, we don't need healing as much. Because we're playing with Caliana, who has no hit points. Caliana's interesting mechanic is the first 3 times a heart would be placed on Caliana each turn or boss round. Spend time instead. If Caliana would take damage, the game ends. So she never has hit points. So potions never actually do anything for her. But hey, we can still use Aid. All right. And if you've never played a hybrid game before, you can actually tell which cards belong to which deck by their backside. These 2 cards are actually Forest of Shadows doors because they have a green tint to them. These 2 doors are base game doors because they're blue. So that's cool. Null. You cannot place heroic dice on dungeon challenge boxes. Okay. Well, we have a bunch of mana. Not much mana here, but Fairy Fire could get us a Strength 6 and Agility 6, no problem. I guess I'm using Piercing Blast. I forgot to change that from one to the other, but whatever. Now we have Piercing Blast. Yay! Blind Luck gives me a 2. I guess that will cover that armor box for us. Fearlessness gives us a heroic. Cannot be placed on the dungeon challenge boxes, so these boxes on the right, but we could use them in the middle. Bull Rush, that can reduce those. Reroll 2 dice. Yeah, let's go for it. There's not many consequences here, right? There's 2 hearts, 1 poison, 3 time, and the hearts turn into time, so it's actually 5 time if we don't do anything, and a poison. It's a really light card, so it's worth fighting almost if you can't even do it. Let's start with Fearlessness and see what that gets me. It gives me a heroic 6. Nice. Bull Rush. Always do Bull Rush. Do we need to re-roll? Well, our strength and our agility is piddly. We could also gain a 2 that we could then re-roll. Is it really a re-roll if you never actually rolled it? Like, if you didn't turn in a homework assignment, but you ask your instructor to redo it, is it really a redo or is it just a do? Getting all philosophical here. Well, I feel like using Endless Assault on these are going to lighten our strength and agility need. Well, you can't do any better than that. I was gonna say you can't do much better than that, but you actually can't do any better than that. Literally, you can't do any better. All right, what are we gonna do? This 6 can't go there, but it could go over here if we need it. These 6s are brilliant. Not quite sure what I want to do with the others. We could get heroic dice. Heroic dice cannot go over here, so I feel like this strength needs to go there. And that's a bit of a waste of heroics there, but we could turn these into heroics. We also have Fairy Fire that can get us a 6 and a 6. If I do that, it's probably better to... Well, is it better or worse? I don't know. Well, if I make this a mana die, then it's not going to do anything. If I make it a strength or agility, we can use it. The question is... Well, let's play around a little bit. Let's do Fairy Fire. I can do Piercing Blast. Oh, I can't use Piercing Blast. That's a mana ability. Okay. Let's turn this into a heroic. Let's see what our thoughts are now. I could put this on that 4. I still have to cover this square. I have to cover that square. That's one possibility. Think I can do any better than that? The answer is no. All right. I'd rather have the strength item than the skill, because the skill, you spend 2 mana, roll a strength, agility, discard one of them. I'll rather just take a strength die off of that. Only 12 out of 7. As John says, just cover all the squares. Heroism. I love this potion. Can we get that? We should be able to. We have Piercing Blast and Bull Rush that can deal with this agility square to an extent. We have this extra strength die. We have to get strength 5s. Lots of mana, but we have lots of mana, so let's try it. What are the current consequences? We have 4 hearts, so we need to cover one of the heart squares, absolutely. Lots of time, but that shouldn't matter, really. Okay. Start with Fearlessness. Oh, right. Spend time for each skill you use. Shoot. That does complicate things, doesn't it? So what happens if we just try our best with what we have? What happens? What happens is we almost can't do anything. What happens is we lose. I turn this into a heroic. I cover the armor box. I wouldn't be able to cover anything else, and then I lose. So I do have to use at least 1 skill. So what skills would be most useful then? It's not just automatically use all the skills. Any skill that's basically avoids you using one time is the least useful. Fairy Fire is probably the most potent. If I put these 6 into Fairy Fire, that gives me a Strength 6, Agility 6. That would give me a means to cover that armor. This armor would be covered. I would still be able to cover that 5, and the Strength 6 would cover one of the Strength squares that doesn't actually matter. So then that would be 6 time. Plus 1. We'd have spent 7 time. I could have gotten 15 out of 7. Man, I could have gotten a better ratio. This is a bit tough because my usual go-to is Fearlessness to start with, but if I use Fearlessness, I can't rewind, and Fearlessness might give me a 1, which is a waste. If it gives me a 6, that's ideal, of course, but it's a 1 out of 6 chance. What it really needs to be is a 5 or better, really. Actually, if it's a 3, 4, or 5, it improves this board anyway. Like, it just needs to be a 3 or higher. Okay, let's spend the time and hope to get a 3 or higher. Okay, we got a 3. So now, presently, what that means... I only really need 5 out of that. Because that covers that armor, that covers that armor, we cover that, cover that, cover that. And now we only are spending 4 time, but we spent 2 time to get there. So that's a total of 6 time, which previously it was 7 times. So we saved 1 time, yay! I joked on Tuesday that if you want to see someone agonize over how to, like, if you want to see someone spend time trying to figure out how to not spend time, come to Dolphin Side. This is the moment. This is the moment where you see Lou Dolphin agonize over how to not spend time. If we can cut out 1 more time, that would be ideal. I could do -1 to the dungeon numbers, so I could place my 4. That would spend a time. Wait. How to do a -1 to the dungeon numbers. Bull Rush only affects large squares. Or large boxes. So that would reduce that 10 to a 9. But that agility is not doing anything. Well, if I do that... Well, it doesn't actually do anything, right? But if I do that, what does that mean? I would still need to get that 5 off of Fairy Fire, so that doesn't mean I can reduce this down to a 3. I could place a 3 there. Bull Rush would spend the time, and then I could remove this 5. And then I could convert to a Heroic. And now instead of spending 6 time, I'm spending 7 time. Yay! Yeah, this is not the ability that always reduces it by 1, unfortunately. I could re-roll my strength and mana. Ideally, I roll a 5 strength 4 mana or a better, and then I cover both, and I spend 1 time and save 4. But what's the probability that I get a trash roll? Because if I spend 1 time, if I can cover 1 of those squares, it's worth it. So I guess the question is, so it's a 50% chance the mana roll will be high enough. It's a 33% chance that the strength roll will be high enough. So what's the probability that at least one will be high enough? If I roll a 4 on either die, I can make a heroic to cover the 4. Okay. So then I guess, okay, so now it's a question of what is the chances that both of them are 3 or higher. It's a 25% chance that neither of them are, so it's a 75% chance that one of them will be 4 or higher. So now let's talk about expected value. Welcome to Lou Dolphin stream, where we talk about probability. So, and if you're wondering how I'm getting these percentages, so we want, if we get a mana 4, we're golden. If we get a strength 5, we're golden. If we get a strength 4, we could use that strength 4 with this strength 4 to get a heroic 4 that covers this mana 4. So ultimately, we just need either die to be 4 or higher. So a die has 6 sides to it. We need it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So a chance of it being 4 or higher is a chance of it being 4, 5, or 6. That's 3 out of 6 or 1/2. So a probability that a roll will be 4 or higher is 1/2. If you look at 2 dice, however, and you ask what is the probability that at least one of them will be 4 or higher, that can be found as 1 minus the probability that neither are 4 or higher. And it's a bit more complicated to explain why that probability is 25%. These 2 dice roll independently. Each of these is a 50% chance. Independent events multiply, so 50% times 50% is 25%, and 100% minus 25% is 75%. Welcome to Math with Lou Dolphin. So 75% chance that we roll 4 or higher. It's a 50% chance that we roll only 1 4, I think. And a 25% chance that they're both 4s, which ultimately, actually, okay, I was trying to determine expected value, but I think ultimately it's a lot more complicated by the fact that 2 4s is not actually better than 1 4. It's a strength 5 and a mana 4 that's better, so I'm gonna give up this explanation. Let's go ahead and gamble then. If either of these are a 4, this was a worthwhile gamble. One of these was a 4. Proposal: replace probability in math class with Lude playing 1-deck dungeon. Alright, so now we spent 3 time, but we're now spending 2 time, so yeah, 5 time. All I wanted to do was spend 1 fewer time, and we got that. Yay! Alright, Fire Elemental. Before the encounter, 1 hero loses a heart. Mana Fountain! Mana Fountain and Fairy Fire is now busted. Okay, we want that skill. We absolutely want that skill. So, can we do this encounter? We're currently taking 4 hearts and spending 7 time. We need to reduce the hearts by 1. Should be able to do that, even though these are 6s and 11s. At the very least, we should be able to cover this box because we have 5 mana dice, and if we can't get enough mana dice to cover that, we have heroism, so we should be able to do that. However, bear in mind, we're going to lose a heart, so we actually need to cover... Yeah, well, if we cover the 11, we're still good. All right, what's happening here? And now we can actually use skills again. Yay! Fearlessness. And then what next? Reroll the 1s, maybe? If either of these are a 2, we can use it on the 2, and then we could save these 3s for something else. We get a mana 6, which is perfect. And a 2. That was probably the perfect roll. Outside of it being actually 2 6s. I could have also gotten a mana 2 off of this, but now I can save that. I can actually get a mana 2 to cover that box if I so wanted, but I don't have to. That has to go there. That is probably going there. So what do now? If I get a mana 2, I could use this heroic in Fairy Fire. That will give me a strength 6, agility 6. The agility 6 goes there. I still have to cover that box. I think I could do that though. Before I do that, let's step back a second. Let's use Bull Rush. Might as well. I can't hazard why I wouldn't want to use this on mana. Piercing Blast is spend 3 ether to reduce this 2 to 1, which is a waste of mana. But now this 10 could be covered this way. Problem is this gives me a 5, which isn't enough to cover the 6. I'm trying to see if I can find a way to cover this 3. I don't think I have enough volume of dice to do it. Because in order to cover this agility 6, I need to put 6 mana into Fairy Fire. I could do it this way. Is that better or worse? It's going to be the same because I can't get this into being 9. Or, it's going to become 9. I can't make it any better than that because when I convert these, that's 9. What did I convert? I converted to Strength 3. Because this is a 4, if I put... It was there, right? Those were... Or maybe it wasn't those, but either way... Like, if I do this... and I convert these to a 3, that can then cover the agility box. But then I have the spare 4 that's not doing anything, so it's not any better. Rewind. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to have that one time, which isn't the worst. Just wanted to do slightly better. Yeah, they had to go there. Alright, but Mana Fountain, that is absolutely the skill to take. Because now we can fund Fairy Fire for free. For the encounter, spend 1 time for each poison in the party. That's not annoying. We have all these strengths here, but we should be able to deal with them. Okay. Let's start with Fearlessness because we can't undo past that. All right. Thanks for joining, Hoey. Hope you enjoyed your stay. Have a good day. Be sure to tune in Thursdays at 7 p.m. for Dolphin's Dive, and also check out the other streams we have on this channel. We have every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Lots of streams around the clock. Well, not really around the clock, around the week, I guess is the better phrase. Now here, Piercing Blast is actually pretty potent. Gonna reduce 4 boxes by 1. And I'd actually be able to place a 1. And I'd be able to cover these 2. That's a thought. But first, I should think about reroll. I feel like rerolling the mana is probably the best bet, even though I'm not using it for Fairy Fire. But I guess the problem though is we don't have that much to cover the strengths, right? Rerolling the mana is not going to help cover the strengths. I could get these covered here already, and rerolling those aren't going to help. But if I get a strength 2, this agility 5 is also going to have to be used for heroic purposes, I'd say. It can be used with the agility 6, and that would give me a heroic 5, and that would cover the one of the 5s, I guess. But if I take a strength die off of blind luck, I could re-roll that, and that might be a 5. It's not too likely to be a 5, but that might be better than rolling mana. With mana, we do kind of need a mana 6, I guess. So we could roll 1. That's a 1 out of 6 chance of being a mana 6. If I roll 2, the chances that both are not 6 is 25 out of 36, which means it's 11 out of 36 chance of getting 2 6s out of that, but that still seems like I'm kind of resigned to not covering this mana 6, basically, but I want to be able to cover one of these strength 5s if I can. But let's gain a strength 2 and then re-roll a strength 2 and a mana. Okay. Could aid, or heroism actually would be strictly better than aid. Although aid could be used on heroic dice, but... Alright, mana fountain, use that on fairy fire. That's going to be used. I held off on that because I needed to. If I'm going to use piercing blast, it's actually going to be these 2 dice. But yeah, I'm going to have to. Covers most of it. Ah! If I make this a heroic 5 and I make this a heroic 6, that covers the board. There we go. Alright, agility die, or spend a strength die to roll a heroic die and increase it by 1, or experience. I'm gonna go with agility die. Let's see. Any boxes are empty, spend 2 time. Invisibility potions, spend 2 time, skip to claim loot. Visibility is really nice, but with Caliana, I generally don't use it because Caliana is really strong. But this is only 2 experience otherwise, so it might be better to take the potion. It gives me a potion token I can use for heroism. Alright, so enter, roll. We want to cover as many boxes as we can because we don't want to spend 2 time. Blind luck on a mana 2. Problem is we're just a hair short. If I re-roll, first off, is there a square that I have a little bit more leeway in? The best is that mana 4. That doesn't really do much for me. If I re-roll any 2 dice, I can always turn into a heroic. Just trying to see if there's a way I can guarantee or improve upon this. This is only 1 time though, so it's not really worth spending that much time on. It's not worth spending time trying to save time, right? Let's go ahead and re-roll the strength and the mana. And that's perfect. All right. Let's take the potion, even though I might not use it that much, but if I do feel scared by an encounter. All right, finesse. Spend an agility die to gain an agility 4 and roll a strength die. That seems nice. Could also take more mana, but with mana fountain, I don't need mana as much. In fact, our mana is, yeah, currently very good. Let's just, I mean, there's not much mana on this card though, so this could be a candidate for invisibility, but I'm willing to gamble it. Seems like a good roll. We have to avoid 5s though, that's part of the problem. But Fairy Fire will help with this significantly. problem is my current setup is only 5s. Well, that 5 can go there. So many fights where Bull Rush does nothing. And a 2 isn't gonna do anything. So it's really just Endless Assault. And Endless Assault is really interesting. I kind of want to re-roll both of these 5s. Because currently my mana, if they convert to heroics, will work. But really, I'm just looking for a 3 or a 4 or a 6. So if I re-roll these 2, these will be candidates for this square. I can cover the strength 3 with this heroic here. So as long as these are not 1 and 2, it should be strictly better. Look, it's 1 and 2. So that's annoying. Well, spending 1 time is better than spending 1 time and taking a poison. That was just poison straight up, actually. 1 poison's fine, though. It's a 2 out of 6 chance that I don't have an effect, and a 1 out of 6 chance that I spend 2 times, so it's actually not bad. We'll go ahead and accept that consequence. Take Finesse. Razor Bark. This is an encounter we might just want to use invisibility on because we won't exile dice. But exiling a single heroic die and single strength die isn't terrible. But we're not really going to have much candidates for invisibility, and this fight is kind of the definition of invisibility, and Flame Walk is a really good skill. It's definitely much better than Finesse. It's an upfront cost of 6 mana, but it gives you 4 mana back. You can actually use Mana Fountain with this. Like, Mana Fountain and Flame Walk gives you a free Strength 5, Agility 6, Mana 4. That Mana 4 could go towards Fairy Fire optionally. Fairy Fire gives you Strength 6, Agility 6. This gives you Strength 5, Agility 6, and also a Mana 4, so that might be a better candidate to combo with Mana Fountain. I'm gonna go ahead and Invisibility this, and take Flame Walk and eliminate Finesse, even though we just literally got it. We need to keep Mana Fountain. Spiked Log. This is geez. Not a good peril. There's no mana here. But if we clobber the logs and we lose, which we will definitely lose because we don't have any, I don't know, I guess we have Blind Luck. Blind Luck is a peril skill. We get a 2 strength out of that. If we clobber logs, worst case, we spend 6 time. And by worst case, I mean most likely case. If we were to be so fortunate as to roll a 4 and a 6, we'd be able to cover everything and immediately win. It might be better to not do this, though. Because Static Burst is a good skill, but I'm at my skill limit. Maybe if I level up first and then go for it, then I could take Static Burst. Yeah, let's flee, because I could still explore and then decide later what to do with Spiked Log. We're at the point now where we're out of doors. Okay. We should be able to display prowess. Do have to be careful though, because 4 time turns into 1 damage in 1 time. 1 damage in Caliana turns into time, so that's actually going to be 2 hearts there. And if you take 2 more damage, that'll be 2 more time, and that will be another damage in Caliana. So actually display prowess. If I fail it, I lose. but I'm a little more confident in this. The hard part is rolling a 4. And now we can cover that box. All right, easy peasy. Forest Blessing. Reroll a die, gain a heroic 1. Take the experience, level up. I now have a free heroic die. I could now go for Static Burst, although now it's more dangerous because if I don't clobber logs, I mean, I spend 2 time up front, which turns into 1 damage, which turns into 1 time, so it's actually spending 3 time. And then if I don't succeed, yeah, then I automatically lose. I could just use the invisibility potion on it. Spend 2 time, turns into 1 damage, turns into 1 time. We already have a lot of skills that give good strength and agility, though. The +1 effect is really nice, but... Okay, Mana Fountain into Flame Walk into Static Burst gives me Strength 5, Agility 6, Strength 4, Agility 4, and I can increase the die by 1, and that's not considering the rest of my roll, right? So, like, if we just think about the boss, right? I have to worry about the 3s. That's the hard part. But against the boss, I would have 9 strength and 10 agility covering these squares or rectangles automatically, disregarding the rest of my roll. Never mind the fact that for the rest of the dungeon, I already have strength 9, agility 10 on any combats. Yeah, I think I wanted to go for that and I wanted to just take it. And now Caliana, because of her special rule, she can actually stay on this floor a lot longer because she's already taken 1 damage. But yeah, this resets after every round, so we can actually stay here. Now here, we're going to spend a time for each closed door, so it's going to spend 1 time, so that's automatically going to do an extra damage to Caliana. But if I foresee myself being able to win this encounter straight up, which I should be able to, I mean, I just need to get a mana 6, but that's not even an issue because... I mean, I have to get a mana 6. I mean, I have to. But even if I get that poison, it's not an issue. But we'll be able to get lots of numbers. Yeah, so I'm just going to go for it. Can't take any more time or damage. But look at this. Mana Fountain. Well, actually, before we do that, Fearlessness. Start with the roll. Then Mana Fountain into Flame Walk into Static Burst. But before I do that, I need to know what die I'm going to increase by 1. Because that's an important question. We already have the mana covered. We already have the agility covered. We haven't even considered this 4 and 4. This 4 covers that. So actually, no, Static Burst is enough. It doesn't matter what this is. Once you reach a point in one deck dungeon where it doesn't matter what your roll is, it's really powerful. This also increases a die by 1 and can be used on perils. But mana. I want mana. Ooh, Spark. Q Lude somehow rolling all 2s. By the way, on floor 2, any 2s rolled are immediately discarded. Be mindful of that. We can easily contain. If we can't contain, I'll eat my hat. I almost had to eat my hat. Look at all these numbers that aren't 4. Although, if worst came to worst, I had heroism. Okay, I'm gonna take Spark. I have a lot of mana skills, but Caliana is all about the mana. Alright, now it gets a bit scary because 2s are discarded, but we still have these free strength and agility regardless of anything else. Lots of agility here, but This should be fine. And we're discarding 2 2s. All right. We have a candidate to increase by 1. To cover that square, but we're going to get lots off of Flame Walk. Flame Walk covers the last agility, Static Burst covers the agility armor, and Flame Walk gives me, yeah, so this is it. It doesn't matter what I increase again. Like, oh, you know what? It does matter what I increase. It literally mattered what I increased. We said that. I don't know what I rewound past. Okay, let's just do this before I forget to do that. Yeah, I needed to have the 2 strength 5s. That goes there. That goes there, that goes there, that goes there. And most of this was just because of Mana Fountain, Flame Walk, and Static Burst. None of the rest of that really mattered. Alright, so item limit, skill limit, persistence is another peril skill, but it's not really that good. I would probably just replace the agility die with an agility die, because that gives me 3 experience. Because that gives more experience for your buck. Alright, Vortex Stone. Invulnerability Potion can at least stop Caliana from taking too much damage, but it can't be used on the boss. I'm on my item limit, and the heart doesn't mean anything, so this is just pure experience, but we can stabilize the aura. Now, Spark can be used on perils, but if I roll a 2, that die is gone. So first decide if I need it. I don't need it, so I'm not going to use it. Caliana is really powerful when you have her set up correctly. X equals 4 per open door, including this one. We literally saw an encounter just like this. Shimmer Blast, 3 mana, roll a heroic die. Interesting. Our skill limit, though. Do I value that more than Spark? I kind of prefer Spark. Both of these are roll skills, though, which are dangerous. We have a strength die. Not really any better than the one we have right now. So this is just an experience fight, and that would level me up, so that's fine. Only 1-2. Alright. So those are covered. That's covered. Those are covered. That will be covered with Static Burst. That covers that. So the increase off of Static Burst, again, doesn't matter. Yeah, we're just rolling through this game at this point. I mean, we found all the good skills really quickly. That's part of it. We have a peril, but it doesn't give us the right ones that we want. And I don't really care for any of this. I'm just gonna flee. Because the alternative is either invisibility, or I just take damage and spend time, but then I have less time in this encounter, or dungeon, or floor, or whatever. Although with Caliana, I frequently reach a point where I'm spending as much time as I can because I'm already set up, I'm already at level 4, I don't need more potions. Roll a strength and we discard it to gain a heroic 3. Or mana die. Mana die is important. So we will fly over and we'll roll only 2s. No. Okay. I think this time we aren't going to have to utilize Spark in some capacity. So we can cover that armor. I would like to cover the 6 if I can. So the question is, what happens? That's not enough to cover Spark. Spark is likely to roll a 6. Well, but the problem is I don't have enough dice to cover both the 14 and the 6, even with Spark. Because at best, Spark gives me a 6. But to do that, I need to spend 3 into it, which means there's 13 here. And if I fail the Spark roll, if I roll a 2, it's over. If I roll a 1, well, I guess it goes wherever it is. There's a 1 out of 6 chance that I lose that die, and I can't cover any of these squares. So it seems to me I might as well just take the 6. I could use Heroism, but that loses a potion. This is just 2 times. 2 times fine. Especially if we're eventually going to reach the point where we're just spending time anyway. Now, bear in mind that the 1 HP on Caliana doesn't mean anything, because her rule says if Caliana would take damage, the game ends. Even though she has 1 hit point, and could have 2 hit points or more, it doesn't matter how many hit points she has. If she takes any damage, the game ends. So, don't pay attention to her hit points. Crushing Fist. 2 strength 6s. At the very least, it covers the skull, I guess. We already have a bajillion mana things, but Crushing Fist is so good. And this roll is so good, too. This is the roll you dream of. 22 out of 14, yay! Alright. More perils. No mana here. Spend a strength, gain a strength 5, agility 2. I'd be a bit happier with that if that were an agility 3, because then I could say that would cover that agility box, but it doesn't. You already have a bajillion strength. I think I'm gonna flee, because I don't care for either of these rewards. I'm going to explore and see 2 more doors. Because I might find something better. I already have really good skills right now, but I'm not frowning upon more dice. Barrage is not that useful. Bolster should be doable. I'm going to spend 3 time, and now I can take 1 fewer damage. So I need to cover this, which I can use with a potion if needed. And here's where it gets a bit scary. Although this 7's already covered, I just need to roll a 6, if I can. This is 50% chance of being a 6. It's a 4. Or a 2, rather, because it increased by 2. Because I can't math, apparently. So this is going to be 2 time. That's going to be 3 hearts, 4 hearts. That's going to turn to 2 hearts, 1 more damage in Caliana. It turns to 2 hearts. So I don't need to do anything here. Although I took more damage than I expected, but that was fortunate, rather. I forgot about the inherent damage on... Where is it? Here, there's the damage there. So I almost lost the game by not paying attention, but she took damage 3 times, so that's fine. Everything's fine. My only Caliana loss, historically, was because I didn't notice she took a damage already, and I made a bunch of assumptions about her surviving a round by taking this much damage when she actually could only take 1 more damage. Making a heroic die uses 3 dice, not 2. Cleave. Increase up to 4 of your dice by 1 each. Cleave with blind luck gives us a 3. Which we do need 3s, but we can almost immediately get 3s. Sort of. Well, let's enter. We can do this fight. I mean, combats are, like, not an issue. So Static Burst gives me a 4. I know, it's like a waste either way. I mean, there's a couple ways I can do this. I could just do this, and I don't have to do static burst. That's easy. Now, what do I value more? We do have a bunch of mana skills, which means my mana is very stressed. I mean, Mana Fountain, Flame Walk, and Static Burst fund themselves currently. Crushing Fist, I have to spend mana for. That gives me 2 Strength 6s, which covers 12 of the 17 here, or might cover the 3 there. But Cleave could increase Blind Luck's die by 1. It could increase a bunch of 2s by 1 against Lich directly, giving me the 3s I need to deal with the left side. Do I value Crushing Fist more than Cleave? The problem is I have to spend a Strength die on it. And Caliana currently has only 3 Strength dice. So her worst Strength die would obviously be the one to use, but we wouldn't have as many Strength left over. We're gonna have 9 Strength with Mana Fountain, Flame Walk, and Static Burst, though, and Fairy Fire could potentially give more as needed. Actually, if we put a 2 into Fairy Fire, that gives me a Strength 2 and Agility 2. That Cleave could then increase to a 3. Or we could increase the die that we're putting into Fairy Fire and then still have 3 candidates left over, so it's not as good. But Crushing Fist is more expensive, and it seems to not give as much direct benefit, maybe. But this gives me way more strength. I feel like Crushing Fist is too good. I would be too upset if I were to get rid of it for something that might be situationally useful. Do I want to try for Thorn Spitter or Vine Trap? They're dangerous, they're risky, and those skills are not worth it, and the items are not worth it, and the experience is not worth it. We'll descend. We'll be safe. If an encounter's consequences include damage, add damage to them. And this has no mana in it. That's annoying. Don't think it's worth fighting. 2 experience is almost certainly not worth it. We'll just flee. I want to get to level 4, and that's basically all I need. Oh boy, Phantom. Not really good in Lich. 1s, 2s, and 3s are discarded. This is probably the best candidate for invisibility, but before we do that, bear in mind Mana Fountain, Flame Walk, Static Burst. That gives me a Strength 4 that covers that Strength die, or Strength armor. I'd have to cover the Mana 2, Mana 3, which I could very easily discard all of my mana dice. Yeah, I'm just gonna invisibility. This fight is terrible by itself. It is especially terrible in Lich's Tomb. And do I want the other? No, let's take the experience. We need to level up. Cave-in. Flame Weave is a nice skill earlier in the game. But right now, I don't think it's more valuable than any of my other skills. Like, Blind Luck and Flame Weave gives me a free mana 5. Right? Get the mana 2 off of Blind Luck, put that into Flame Weave, get a mana 5. That might be better than Spark, actually. Now I think about it. Because I have to spend 3 mana into this. Like, Spark pays for itself, right? Because unless you're fighting an encounter where you can't increase dice, you're spending 3 mana, but at worst you roll a 1, but 1 plus 2 is 3. So you're spending 3 mana for a 50% chance at a 6. And worst case, it's just a 3. 1 out of 6 chance that does nothing. 5 out of 6 chance that is a higher number. 3 out of 6 chance that that number is a 6. Flame Weave is free, though. It will always give me a mana 5. Which could turn into Strength 5, Agility 5. But the problem is, we can't do this fight directly. I would have to invisibility potion this, and I'm running dangerously low on potions. Plus, I'm at my skill limit, right? So the problem is I don't have space for this. Oh, but I was going to replace it with Spark. Spark has 3 experience. That would level me up, so it would pay for itself. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that then. Invisibility, take Flame Weave, replace Spark, level up, get my potion back. Now I have an extra heroic die. Moss Golem. Well, that skill does nothing. That item will give me an extra strength for the boss. Add 2 times the consequences for each heroic on this card. We should be able to mitigate that, I would say. Maybe. Alright. Oh yeah, 2s are discarded. Whatever. Plop that there. Plop this here. And Static Burst could also turn this 5 into a 6 for us. If we need it. We probably need it for that 6, don't we? We need to avoid doing heroics on this card. Not really an issue. Actually, all we need is this mana 6. Oh, but I can't Static Burst for it because that requires me to spend that. Oh, but I still have Fearlessness. Hello. Well, I had Fearlessness. Bye! Womp womp. Alright, well, I can Bull Rush. That lightens the load there. Then I could Crushing Fist. Turn this into a heroic. Oh, but then it's a heroic on this card. That's not good then. Huh. If I do Static Burst, I can turn that into a heroic. So if I take a 4 out of this, put it in a Static Burst, increase this by 1 so I have my mana 6, I can convert this to a heroic, and then it's not on this card. Ah, but I have this heroic. Why is that heroic there? Ah. Alright, undo. Oh. Static Burst gives me a 4. Which I totally... So do this, increase this, do that 6 there, do that 4 there. Okay, there we go. I had it. Take the strength. Dare we bash open? If I bash open... Well, worst comes to worst, I use heroism, I'd say, but I have to cover 4/6/4. And I have blind luck. That lightens the bash open, it lightens the rectangle, but it doesn't help that much. Yeah, let's try it. I'm gonna gamble. I do not have that much numbers. I have to cover that one. I can't cover that one. Okay, so I'd have to heroism or aid to cover those. And then that would cover the 11. I would just have these two. Which is effectively equal in consequence to using invisibility. Oh, but consequences include time or damage, so it's, yeah. But I can't avoid that. Okay. Invisibility would have been better. And I could have just explored instead of entering that door, but whatever. Is this going to give me anything I would want? It could give me a strength item. I could decipher it almost no problem. But if I don't roll a 6, that's probably game over. I mean, with Flame Weave and Blind Luck, I get a free mana 5. So I'm not really worried about most of this. I have to cover the 4/6/4. That's the hard part. If I don't get a 6, I don't have any more potions. If I don't get a 6, I take a damage, which turns into an extra damage because of Lich's rule. And I spend a time, which goes to the door, and it becomes a damage. I'll take 3 damage, which is 3 time. Then the 3 time does another damage because that's on the door. That would be the 4th damage I lose. So if I can't cover that 6 on the right, I lose. And I'm not guaranteed to cover that 6. So there's no point in doing this fight. The risk is too high. But all right, this should be fine. We're no longer discarding 2s. That's good news. Fearlessness gives me a free heroic die. That does not much. Mana Fountain. Oh, but I have to discard these. Okay, let's not do that immediately yet. Yeah, we have all the mana dice out, so if I use Mana Fountain, I'm losing one of these dice, so it's better to use one of these mana skills first. Alright, so let's just see what we need to cover on the left. The problem is, yeah, we don't have much agility, and our strength is not good enough. I mean, these might as well just go in there, because there's no reason for them to not go there. And I could at the very least discard that and place that, and then that frees up my mana, because we discarded the mana dice, so now I can use Mana Fountain, and then I can use Flame Walk, and then I can use Static Burst. But first, Flame Weave, because I might as well. That gives me a mana 5. And then we have the 15 covered. So that's good news. So we just have to figure out how to cover the remaining squares. We have more strength and more agility now. The agility is covered entirely. I could get a 6 out, but it's not going to do anything for me. That heroic is probably better saved. So actually, so we still have to cover the strength. The static burst will give the last strength I need there. It's going to give me an extra agility. I could increase the die by 1. I don't think there's much use to that. So now let's consider Crushing Fist. That gives me 2 strength 6s, which gives me 2 out of there, but that doesn't do much, right? That's not doing that much. I still have Fairy Fire. Let's use Fairy Fire. Let's put a 3 into that, because that's basically, we're going to use Fairy Fire to cover that, and that's done, right? And now I can safely cover that. I can safely cover that. Everything's covered. Great. Just cover all the boxes, as always. All right. So we'll do this one more time and we win, right? So let's then cover the 3 to discard that mana, use Mana Fountain and Flame Walk, and then decide what to do from there. So we have a 3 there, we have a 3 there. We've discarded those 3, so now we can safely cover those as needed. I guess Flame Weave, because that's free. Crushing Fist. Because my mana roll is so good, I could just do this without thinking much. I don't know if this decision is going to make sense though, but do that. Do this. We still have Fearlessness, but we don't need it, I think. because we should have everything covered now. All right. Oh yeah, we also had Bull Rush the entire time. Could reduce that by 1. But yeah, that's how Caliana wins. I mean, Caliana's ridiculous. That was like effortless. After the first floor, we didn't have to think too much. All right, so what are we gonna do here? We have most of the pentagons. I've been ignoring healing because it does nothing for Caliana other than recover the poison tokens. We have most of the squares covered, except for durability, which we're neglecting, and healing, which we're neglecting. We have, oh, but we neglected this one as well because this also provides healing. So really the only squares that make sense are these. Then we have circles left. We already maxed out aggression, that's the key one, so really the rest doesn't matter. All right. And that is how you beat one deck dungeon with Caliana. My statistics, I've won with Caliana 14 times. I lost once because, as I mentioned, I neglected to pay attention to how much damage Caliana actually took. Lich, I've won 4 times, lost 8 times. So that's interesting. Any other notable statistic? Many more 1s. Actually, no, 3s were the most rolled. Never mind. Yeah. But the Caliana global statistic of 8,891 to 11,995, I feel like people should better figure out how to play her, because when you play her well, she's extremely potent. All right, but yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your stay in my stream. If you enjoyed watching me as a streamer, be sure to give my personal Twitch channel a follow at twitch.tv/LewDolphin, or follow my Twitter account at LewDolphin21. I don't really tweet that often. I lurk mostly, but hey, I have a Twitter account. And if you liked watching these games, Aeon's End and One Deck Dungeon, they are available on Steam, iOS, and Android devices. You can also find Sentinels of the Multiverse and Bottom of the Ninth, 2 other Handelabra products available on Steam, iOS, and Android devices. And Spirit Island is in early access on Steam as well. So all of these fun games that you can play at your fingertips or on the computer. Be sure to follow this channel, twitch.tv/Handelabra Games, or on YouTube, it's Handelabra, in order to find some other gaming content from Handelabra products. Every Monday we have On Deck with Pirate Savvy and Dover, a brother-sister duo that like to play games together and have some fun. Every Tuesday we have Handelabra Live with John and sometimes Jeremy, 2 of the leads of Handelabra who like to demo content before it is publicly available. Recently they've been showing some of the Spirit Island updates as the early access develops or progresses, and also the Aeon's End expansion, The Nameless, where they showed a mage and some of the supply cards that they were able to implement thus far. Every Thursday at 7 p.m. is Dolphin's Dive with yours truly, where we do some strategic diving into the Handelabra games and try to discuss and teach and educate how these games work and how you can best win these games. Every Saturday at 7 p.m. is Spirit Island Saturdays with me and usually John. John's been around for a while. He's kind of a regular at this point. And sometimes a third guest. This week we do not have a guest slated. There was a possibility of someone being able to join, but they do not have availability for this weekend. So if you would like to be able to join Spirit Island Saturdays as a third wheel or a fourth wheel, or well, yeah, fourth wheel is kind of the limit because it's a 4-spirit game at most, be sure to try to reach out to me or John on Discord or Twitter, and we will try to fit you in when we can. Hopefully you have Spirit Island experience, but most people are welcome as long as they're willing to be on stream. And Sundays at 7 p.m. is Tales from the Archive with another letdown for some storytelling sentinels. This was Lew Dolphin here at Channel 4 News at 9 p.m. I'm not a newscaster. Sometimes I feel like a newscaster, but I'm not a newscaster. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your stay, and I'll see you around on Saturday for Spirit Island Saturdays. Have a good night.